There is a secret group of islands in the Indian Ocean where the air smells like expensive perfume, and giant volcanoes create a landscape that looks like the moon. Most travelers completely ignore this place, even though it has white sand beaches and rare animals you cannot find anywhere else on Earth. You might have heard of the Maldives or the Seychelles, but almost nobody talks about the Comoros Islands. It is one of the least visited countries in the entire world, which means you get the whole place to yourself. In this video, I'm going to show you 20 amazing things to do in this hidden paradise. We are going to explore deep craters and swim with giant sea turtles. By the time we finish, you will understand why people call this the Perfume Isles. You will also find out why one specific fish here was thought to be extinct for millions of years until it popped up again. The first thing you absolutely have to do is hike Mount Karthala on the island of Grand Comore. This is not just any hill, because it is one of the biggest active volcanoes in the world. The climb takes a long time, and your legs will definitely feel tired after a few hours of walking through the thick forest. As you get higher, the trees start to disappear, and the ground turns into dark, volcanic sand. When you finally reach the top, you will look down into a massive hole called a caldera that is over 2 miles wide. It looks like a giant gray bowl, and you can actually walk across the floor of the crater. Being inside the crater feels like you have stepped onto another planet because there is no green grass or life anywhere. The silence is heavy, and you can see steam coming out of cracks in the ground from the heat below. After you come down from the mountain, you should head straight to the capital city called Moroni to see the Old Friday Mosque. This building is right on the edge of the ocean, and it has been standing there since the year 1427. The walls are made of bright white coral stone that glows when the sun hits it. You can hear the waves crashing against the rocks while you look at the beautiful arches and the tall minaret. Walking through the narrow streets of the Moroni Medina is like going back in time hundreds of years. The alleys are so skinny that you can touch the walls on both sides if you stretch out your arms. You will see heavy wooden doors with very detailed carvings that tell stories about the families living inside. It is easy to get lost, but that is actually the best way to see the local life. Kids will be running around playing games, and grandmas will be sitting on their porches chatting in the shade. The smell of frying bread and sweet tea fills the air as you turn every corner. When you get hungry, you need to visit the Volo Volo Market, which is the biggest shopping area on the island. This place is loud and crowded, but it is the heartbeat of the city. You will see piles of bright yellow bananas and huge sacks of green cloves that make the whole market smell spicy. This is the best place to buy a colorful piece of cloth called a kiramani, which local women wear. If you want to see something really weird, you should drive to the northern tip of the island to see the Salt Lake. It is a deep green pool of water that sits inside a perfect circle made of rocks. Local people say the lake has no bottom and that the water changes color depending on the time of day. It is right next to the blue ocean, so the contrast between the green lake and the blue sea is amazing. Just a short walk from the lake, you will find a rock formation called the Dragon's Back. These are jagged rocks that stick out of the ground in a long line along the coast. From a distance, it looks exactly like the spine of a giant sleeping dragon that turned into stone. You can climb along the rocks to get a great view of the waves hitting the shore. If you want to relax, you should head to Mitsamuli Beach, where the sand is as white as sugar. The water is very calm here because there is a coral reef that stops the big waves from coming in. It is the perfect spot for a swim or just lying under a palm tree with a cold coconut drink. You might even see local fishermen bringing in their catch in small wooden boats called galawas. Speaking of boats, you should definitely try to ride in a galawa yourself. These are traditional canoes with wooden sticks on the sides to keep them from tipping over. Learning to paddle one is harder than it looks because they are very light and the wind can push you around. It is a great way to see the island from the water and get some exercise at the same time. Next, we have to talk about the island of Moheli, which is the best place for people who love animals. This island is very quiet and has a lot of protected areas for nature. The biggest highlight here is watching the green sea turtles at a village called Niaumachua. These turtles are huge, and they come up onto the beach at night to lay their eggs in the sand. You have to be very quiet, and use a special red light so you don't scare them away. If you are lucky, you might even see tiny baby turtles hatching and running toward the ocean for the first time. Moheli also has a huge marine park where you can go snorkeling in water that is clear as glass. There are hundreds of different types of fish, and the coral looks like an underwater garden. Sometimes you can even see dolphins jumping near your boat or humpback whales if you visit during the right months. The whales come here to have their babies because the water is warm and safe. Deep in the forest of Moheli, there is a very rare animal called Livingstone's fruit bat. These are some of the biggest bats in the world, and their wings can be as wide as a tall human. They don't eat meat or bugs because they only like to eat fruit from the trees. Seeing them hang upside down in the tall trees is a bit scary at first, but they are actually very gentle. If you get too hot in the jungle, you can go find one of the hidden waterfalls on the island. There are small paths that lead to fresh pools of water where you can wash off the salt from the ocean. Staying in a local village guest house is a great way to meet the people of Moheli. They will cook you big plates of rice and fish and tell you stories about the islands. The third island you need to visit is called Anjouan, and people call it the Perfume Island. As soon as you step off the boat, you will notice a very sweet smell in the air. This smell comes from a yellow flower called lang lang, which is used to make the most expensive perfumes in Paris. You can visit the distilleries where they boil the flowers to get the precious oil. The steam from the big metal pots fills the rooms with a scent that is so strong, it almost makes you feel dizzy. It is a very cool process to watch, and you can see how much work goes into one tiny bottle. Anjouan is also very famous for its spices, like cloves and vanilla beans. You can take a tour of a spice plantation and see how vanilla grows on a vine like an orchid. The farmers have to pollinate every single flower by hand with a tiny stick, which is why vanilla is so expensive. You will see long rows of cloves drying in the sun on large mats on the ground. In the main town of Anjouan, you should visit the citadel of Mutsamudu. This is a big stone fortress built on a hill to protect the island from pirates a long time ago. You can walk along the old walls and see the rusty cannons that are still pointing out toward the sea. The view of the harbor and the colorful houses from the top of the fort is the best on the island. For a bit of a challenge, you can hike up to Lake Jelanze, which is high up in the mountains. It is a very peaceful place surrounded by green ferns and trees that are often covered in mist. The air up there is much cooler than down by the beach, so it feels very refreshing. It is a great spot for a picnic after a long walk through the hills. Now we need to talk about the food, because you cannot visit Comoros without eating lobster with vanilla sauce. It sounds like a strange mix because we usually put vanilla in cake or ice cream, but the creamy sauce tastes amazing with the fresh, salty meat of the lobster. It is the most famous dish in the country, and you can find it at many small restaurants near the water. While you are eating, you will notice that the local people are very friendly and love to talk. One of the best things to do is just sit down and have a cup of spiced tea with them. The tea is usually made with ginger and cardamom, and it is very hot, even though the weather is warm. It is a big part of the social life here, and people use tea time to share news and jokes. One big challenge you might face when visiting Comoros is the cost of the grand marriage. This is a huge traditional wedding festival that can last for 2 whole weeks. Men spend their entire lives saving up money to pay for these weddings because they are a big deal for their social status. If you are invited to one, you will see thousands of people dancing and eating together. The problem is that these weddings are so expensive that they can make life difficult for the families. But for a visitor, seeing the traditional clothes and hearing the music is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. Another challenge is getting between the islands, because the small planes and boats can be a bit scary. The sea can get rough, and sometimes the flights are delayed for no reason at all. But if you are patient, the reward is getting to see places that look like they belong in a movie. You will find beaches with no footprints and forests that feel like they have never been touched. Before we finish, we have to mention the National Museum in Moroni. This is where you can see the famous coelacanth fish, which was the big surprise I mentioned earlier. Scientists thought this fish died out 65 million years ago, along with the dinosaurs. Then, one day in 1938, a fisherman caught one, and the whole world was shocked. You can see a preserved one in the museum and look at its strange fins that look almost like little legs. It is a reminder that these islands still hold many secrets that we don't fully understand yet. Comoros is a place for people who want a real adventure and don't mind a bit of a bumpy ride. It is not a place with big fancy resorts or fast food restaurants everywhere. It is a place where you can feel the heat of a volcano and smell the sweetness of flowers on the wind. It is a place where the people are kind and the nature is still wild and beautiful. If you are looking for a destination that is truly different from anywhere else, then you need to put these islands on your list. You will come home with stories that none of your friends have ever heard. Check our video descriptions for the best deals in hotels and accommodation, flights, attractions and tours, travel eSIMs and insurance, transfers and airport services, trains and buses, car and bike rentals, cruises, package tours,